aborting more than 1 of every 4 pregnancies, eliminating our elderly with euthanasia. Is this how we should deal with human life? Find out how you can make a difference in changing our culture in this edition of Life Matters. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on the right to life, on the cultural impact of the right to life or its loss, and this very real battle of ideas that we're in right now. And if you don't realize that we're in a battle of ideas, then you've already lost. Because the ideas that have made our country great, the ideas that have built this nation, are under direct assault. And one of the principal ideas is the idea of the right to life, that every human being is unique and given rights not by the government, but by their Creator. And the job of the government is to protect the rights, and particularly the right to life. Well, I'm at the National Right to Life Board meeting, and we just wrapped up in Washington, D.C. A very good friend with us here. It's Wayne Cockfield, and Wayne has been on the board of National Right to Life for many years and works in South Carolina with South Carolina Citizens for Life.
Yes.
And has done a great job there. This particular program, we're going to go in depth. And we're going to go in depth. If you have kids listening, I just want to prepare you. We're going to talk about abortion itself. And the tragedy of this entire debate is sometimes the language removes the reality. Even as we talk about the term abortion, as you know, the other side doesn't talk about abortion. They only want to call it choice. So we're not really thinking about what happens. It's critically important. We know this biologically, that that's a unique human being that's killed in an abortion. And often we don't get into greater detail, but the details are there. And they're very, very unpleasant. So we're going to talk about some of the unpleasant aspects, because we're going to talk about a bill that would prohibit the dismemberment of these children. And Wayne was involved recently in the dismemberment ban that was proposed in South Carolina and testified at the state legislature on that. So we're going to hear some of the issues behind the dismemberment ban on abortion. So, Wayne, good to have you.
It's great to be here. Good to see you again.
Yeah, no, it's great. We enjoy hanging out together. Now, tell me this about your testimony. This was before one of the committees.
This was a committee hearing in Columbia, South Carolina. We have a dismemberment of unborn babies ban bill that was being debated. And so both sides were there. They were taking testimony. So we had the Planned Parenthood, pro-death people, and we had family groups, National Right to Life. I actually represented National Right to Life because I'm the Vice President of Medical Ethics of National Right to Life. Yes. But we had our local organization, South Carolina Citizens for Life, and we were testifying to stop the horrible butchery of dismemberment abortion.
That's right. And some of you who have studied the abortion issue, you know about D and C abortions. That's dilation and curettage. That means that the woman's cervix is dilated because they want to get medical instruments in to get after that kid. And the curettage refers to the type of knife. It's a curette. It's a curved scalpel that they stick in there. But that's not all they do, because they also bring forceps and other things. Often that child doesn't want to leave. That's the sad part. And years ago, Dr. Bernard Nathanson did a film called
Silent Scream.
The Silent Scream. And what that did is it showed just how horrific this is. You should know that Wayne is a retired Marine.
Yes.
He's on medical retirement,
yes.
Sergeant in the Marine Corps, served in Vietnam, and I'm so proud of him for that. But that's very important as he discusses this bill and his understanding of what's at stake.
Well, when I came to the committee hearing, I knew what I was going to talk about, but I didn't have anything prepared. And I'm kind of listening to the other side. And what struck me as Planned Parenthood people and people involved in the abortion industry, all they talked about was this is a, quote, safe medical procedure. Of course, the one word that was never used in their testimony was baby. Mm-hmm. It was all about medical procedures, safe, effective. And it is effective. I will give them that. I won't agree that it's safe, obviously, for the baby, and it's not safe for the mother either. But when our side, the pro-life side, time came to testify, I think I was the third person. Our executive director, Holly Gatling, testified first, and we had a doctor testifying. And so when my turn came on the list, I went up to the front, and I told the subcommittee, I said, I've sat here and I've listened to the other side, and I've listened to what they say, and they talk about medical procedures, and they talk about the problems of society and how people need to die to solve the problems of present day society. And I told the subcommittee, I said, the one thing I haven't heard anybody talk about is the baby. And so no one is speaking for the baby. So I'm deciding that what I'm going to do here today, I'm going to speak for the baby. I'm going to talk from the baby's point of view. I'm going to be the representative for the baby, because I understand these babies better than anybody else in this room. We are taking an unborn baby. We are dismembering them. We are cutting them up, a living unborn baby. We are cutting them up alive. We are dismembering them. Nobody in this room understands dismemberment except me, because I'm the only person in this room that's ever been dismembered. And let me tell you, I looked at him, I said, I can tell you, being dismembered is not fun. And the subcommittee was shocked. They knew I'm in a wheelchair. Now, the people of this audio, they don't see me,
right?
But I was wounded in Vietnam. I spent 2 years and 3 months in the hospital. I had 27 operations, and I lost both my legs from infection. So I have been dismembered. So I spoke as someone who had been dismembered. The other side, Planned Parenthood type people, they didn't know what to say. Their jaws had dropped open. They knew I was in a wheelchair. They knew I was an amputee, but they didn't know what I was going to say.
Right.
And neither did the senators on the committee. And I talked about it, and I said, we're talking about unborn children, living unborn children. And we're presenting them with instruments and cutting them up alive. And the pain is incredible. And I talked about the pain of amputation, of being dismembered. And the pain is incredible. Of course, my position of dismemberment, I lost my legs to save my life, not to kill me. And you could hear a pin drop in that room.
Yeah.
So I also made the point that dismemberment abortion is nothing but the historical drawing and quartering of condemned people. That the difference is now it's done out of sight in the womb, but it's still done. And drawing and quartering. And when I was talking about this, we had line drawings, medical line drawings, showing what a dismemberment abortion does. But when I started talking about the drawing and quartering of unborn children, there were actually gasps in the room, just gasps. People hadn't made that connection. And I said, we outlawed drawing and quartering hundreds of years ago because of its savage barbarity. And now what are we doing? We brought it back to execute unborn children in a horrible, horrific, painful, agonizing way. We're cutting them up alive. And I'm the one here that can understand this. And of course, then I asked them to pass the ban out of committee. And it is now passed out of committee, and it's coming to a vote in the South Carolina legislature. And we are fairly confident, pretty confident, that it will pass and will be banned in South Carolina.
That's outstanding. We're talking to Wayne Cockfield. He's vice president of the National Right to Life Committee and has represented the South Carolina Citizens for Life on the board of National Right to Life in years past. He was testifying in South Carolina on the dismemberment abortion ban. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about the implications of this act. Again, I want to remind you that Wayne lost his legs, and not of his own free will. He lost his legs in Vietnam, and the fact is he humanizes this. These are human babies. They're human beings. They're just a little bit smaller and younger than you and me, and most of them do die in a grotesque manner. So we'll be right back after this. We'll talk about other issues related to ethics and how we treat other human beings.
Life Matters continues after this.
This is an important update on Senate Bill 320. Senate Bill 320 would mandate that in California state colleges and universities, young women be given RU-486, the abortifacient drug. This is not a morning after pill. This drug is only taken when the woman knows that she's pregnant and the child is well along. It attacks the woman's body first by preventing it from giving any more nutrition to that child. Only then does the child die, and it results in a spontaneous miscarriage when that young woman can least control the situation. She sees the baby. She sees the clots of blood that come. It's extremely unpleasant. Once a woman has had this, she does not want another one, but your tax money would pay for it. Ask your state senators to vote no on Senate Bill 320.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're meeting with Wayne Cockfield, Vice President of the National Right to Life Committee for Medical Ethics.
Vice President for Medical Ethics, yeah.
Yes. We were talking about a recent testimony he gave in South Carolina regarding the horrendous dismemberment abortion procedure. And it is tough, but it's important that we look at what's going on, what really happens. And sometimes people don't want to look at details. You were telling me a story, Wayne, that the average person is deeply offended when we do things like this to animals.
Yes.
And that this is very important that we recognize what's happening in an abortion. These are our brothers and sisters. That's an individual that's never before existed in human society and never will again exist. Genetically, science is saying this. So we need to recognize our ethical and moral responsibility. You actually mentioned as well, there was a case recently
in South Carolina. There was literally a week before my testimony in South Carolina, a man was arrested for abusing a puppy. It's a horrible story. I won't go into the really gory details, but he cut body parts off of the living puppy, and he was, of course, arrested, and people were horrified, as any normal person would. And I brought this up in my testimony, and I said, when this is done to an animal, of course, rightly, people are shocked, horrified, and demand that it stops. But we're doing this to innocent children.
Yes.
Shouldn't they have the same consideration as an animal?
Yes.
And I don't know. Sometimes I get emotional thinking about this. In the 2 years and 3 months that I spent in the hospital, I underwent a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Pain management was nothing compared to what it is today.
Right.
This was, I was wounded in 1969, so it's been a long time ago. But I was 20 years old when I was wounded, and I understand pain, and I mean, nobody wants to be in pain.
No.
But the thought of being cut to pieces alive, you lose the ability to come up with adjectives that are adequate for what is happening every day, because it's happening inside the womb, out of sight.
That's right.
And it's happening inside Planned Parenthood, where people walking by don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
And just to show you how this bothers Planned Parenthood in South Carolina, they don't talk about the outlawing of dismemberment abortion. They won't use the word dismemberment.
No.
Because people understand dismemberment. So they say, we want to outlaw a procedure.
Yeah.
That's what they call it, procedure.
Yeah.
Well, I consider it torturing an innocent, unborn, living child to death. That's not a procedure.
Yeah.
It's an abomination.
Yes, it really is. And you really stunned me, and it's true. History buffs know that this was the highest form of torture.
Yes.
In medieval times, that one was hung, so they almost died, but then they'd wake them up. And a child, you might say, is awakened. You hear many things about life in the womb, and some people claim memories of that. I don't know about that, but we do know there's cognition in the womb. We know that children hear music. We know there's some folks that want to teach children in the womb and play Mozart over the mom's tummy. There's something going on there. We know that. But in olden times, this was the highest form of torture, that the person would be hung until they're almost dead, then they'd be revived, and then they'd be disemboweled. And their bowels literally would be burned before them. They would watch as their bowels were removed, and they would burn that person's intestines before their own eyes, and then they would dismember them. And it's a very heinous, again, a cruel and unusual punishment, but you're exactly right. That's exactly the kind of procedure we're looking at. Dismemberment abortion is just incredible. When we come back, Wayne has also testified on it seems like a different issue, but it's not. Wayne has testified on the whole issue of dehydration and how people die of dehydration, and that's become another method of killing, a medically accepted method of killing, but at the other end of the spectrum, when people are older and we don't want to care for them anymore. And if you haven't heard about the dehydration debate, the food and water debate, we're going to talk about that for a little bit when we come back on Life Matters.
You're listening to Life Matters.
Hi, I'm Kevin Sorbo, and I was very excited when I heard about LifeFest Film Festival. LifeFest is the film festival dedicated to showcasing films that affirm the intrinsic worth of innocent human life and the profound significance of each life. One seemingly insignificant person can in fact change the whole world in which he or she lives. That one singular life ends up being of vital importance. I'm so glad to hear that you are cherishing that in this film festival and are committed to artfully and creatively protect the lives of those who can't possibly promote themselves.
Life Film Fest is dedicated to bring the message of life to Hollywood and to our culture. Go to lifefilmfest.com and get your tickets now. That's lifefilmfest.com.
Find out about the exciting cultural change impacting Hollywood. Go to lifefilmfest.com. And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on life, culture, in this very real battle of ideas. And it's not a metaphor to say that lives are at stake in this battle. No, this is a real battle for human lives because of the laws that are put into place, the ideas that are enforced. Either lives will be protected or they'll be taken. And we're talking with Wayne Cockfield. He is the Vice President of Medical Ethics for the National Right to Life Committee. And we just got done. If you didn't hear it, maybe you can go to the podcast for listening on radio. And please hear about dismemberment abortions. They're very unpleasant, but it's reality. And the state of South Carolina is looking right now at banning this procedure for killing a baby. I'm going to switch gears slightly, though, because there's another procedure for killing. As you know, the right to life isn't just about babies and abortion. The right to life is a question about the law. Will the law protect those that cannot protect themselves? A very basic premise of society. In 1973, yes, the Supreme Court struck down every state's laws that had protected babies. But more to the point, it removed the idea that there was a right to life for those children. And without a right to life as a premise for our laws, things can get very dangerous. People then, I didn't understand at that time, I'll be perfectly honest, but people who did understand said, wait, if you can kill a human baby whom you can't yet see and do it for social reasons, we will quickly be killing people that you can see for social reasons. And we've seen that now, that the issue of euthanizing those who are problems, people with certain illnesses, people when they get older, people who we don't want to take care of anymore, whether it be for emotional reasons or for financial reasons, that's now happening. And one of the methods, you've heard about assisted suicide, but something that's growing is the idea of taking away the essentials of life, food and water, from someone who's dependent on those for their care. And that would be nearly everybody in a nursing home. That would be a lot of people in acute care hospitals. It would be people even that are in home care. And if you remember the Terry Schiavo debate, Terry was dependent on, at that time, her husband and any caregivers. So this is something that's happening. And Wayne has testified on the issue of dehydration, intentional dehydration. So I want him to talk about that some. And again, he's had personal experience with this.
Yes, I think to myself sometime, when I was wounded in Vietnam and I spent 2 years and 3 months in the hospital, and during this time, I could not drink anything because of my wounds. Now, the doctor's problems and what they had to do was literally necessarily dehydrate me because I literally could not physically assimilate too much water.
Your digestive tract had been so damaged.
I had massive wounds to my stomach and literally really all over me. I mean, a very large explosion went off 2 feet behind me.
Yeah.
And so I was riddled with shrapnel. So what they had to do was keep me alive with the minimal amount of fluid and water possible, because the less fluid that went into me, the easier I could heal. So the goal was to keep me alive literally long enough that I could then heal enough that they could increase the volume of water and fluid.
Yes.
But this doesn't mean I was conscious the whole time. I was obviously in an intensive care unit, and I'd already been medevaced back to America and had many more surgeries, but I was in the intensive care unit of the Philadelphia Naval Hospital. But I got more and more dehydrated, and this happens very quick. I mean, you're talking a day, it goes quick. And I got so dehydrated that they had to give me artificial tears, and because of the tear ducts had dried up in my eyes. My lips split from the dehydration. My tongue really had what felt like fuzz on it.
Sure.
I was so dehydrated, and I was so desperate for water. And there comes a point, even if you're thinking straight, you don't care if the water will hurt you. You just want it.
Yeah. Did you have a drip or anything?
I did have an IV, but they had to keep my fluid intake to such a minute amount.
Yes.
And they were trying to give me just enough to keep me alive.
Wow.
Because too much would kill me.
Yes.
Now, it's funny how you can take bad situations, but good can come out of them.
Yeah.
Obviously back then, that was an extremely bad situation for me personally, but good has come out because I have an insight to procedures and things and dehydration that regular people do not have.
Yes.
And so I was so dehydrated, I was burning fever. They had to put me into an alcohol and ice bath because my fever had spiked up to 107, and they were worried about mental damage, brain damage. And so they told me they had to do this because they were afraid of brain damage. And I said, I would rather die from fever than die from cold. It was so terrible. But afterwards, they had a bowl of ice and straight alcohol, rubbing alcohol by my bed because they were bathing me. And I was so thirsty, I took that ice out of the alcohol and started eating it. And I mean, people think that would taste terrible. Not in my condition. It tasted like ambrosia. You were so parched. It was wet on my splitting tongue and dry throat. But they were doing this, the key here is they were doing this to keep me alive, not kill me. And this is why I was so upset when Terry Chavo was thirsted to death.
Yes.
Because I understood what she was going through. And one of the things that really, really affected me back those days is a news story said that Terry had a vase with some roses in it, some flowers with water, and it was near her bed. Oh. And I thought back when I was looking at that pan with alcohol, not water, alcohol with ice, and I was craving any water. And I thought the torture. I thought, Terry, if she could see that water so close to her, but she couldn't reach it, that if she could see that water and know it was there, it would make the torture 1,000 times worse.
Yes.
And thirst is one of the worst sufferings and tortures you can have. And this is a real motivating factor for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to ever be thirsted again. Just kill me. Not that I agree with that,
right.
But it seems like these pro-death people, these pro-euthanasia people, they try to think of the worst way of killing people.
Yeah.
But see, you can withdraw oxygen if the person can start breathing on their own. You can withdraw antibiotics. The patient can still heal. But you withdraw water, and the patient's going to die.
That's right.
And I tell people, water is medicine that can be withdrawn. So when you go to the refrigerator to get a drink of water, you're going to the medicine cabinet? I don't think so.
Right.
But this, to me, is the final solution for disposable people.
Well, that's really what we're looking at. Again, I want to remind you that this type of thing, sadly, I know from my experiences in nursing homes in California, that this is actually happening right now.
Very much.
And if there's a patient, they want a no code, they cease giving them food and water. Now, sadly, there's medical ethicists, and I'm doing quote marks with my fingers, but ethicists that say this is better than assisted suicide. You see, with assisted suicide, this particular author, his name is David Orentlicker. He is an MD, and he's written in Journal of American Medical Association and in various New England Journal of Medicine, instructing euthanasia doctors. And he has said, forget about assisted suicide. People are uncomfortable with it. They don't like the idea of poisoning someone. It scares them. Instead, use terminal sedation is the word he uses. And what it means is you make someone terminal through exactly what Sergeant Cockfield has described here and that he went through. But again, in this case, for Wayne, it was to save his life. It was a drastic measure and brought him to the edge with dehydration designed to kill. What they then do is they drug them so they don't ask for water. I have been in nursing homes, and when you hear someone crying out desperately for water, it'll give you the chills. So what's happening is instead they'll drug them so there's no complications unless you have an advocate, a family member. So this is very, very important. Some of the laws are being changed now to actually make this a routine thing and protect the perpetrators. If you have a family member in a nursing home, you need to be actively involved. You need to make sure they're getting the essentials. In addition to any medical treatment, make sure they're getting the essentials. This is a very real debate. It's on us right now. The battle of ideas involves human lives. Please join in this battle. We've been talking to Wayne Cockfield. He is Vice President of Medical Ethics for National Right to Life. Wayne, thank you very much.
Oh, I had a fun time. Thank you for inviting me.
Again, if you didn't hear, Wayne gave very powerful testimony in South Carolina about the dismemberment abortion ban, and he was dismembered in Vietnam through a terrible, tragic mine explosion. And he talks about the significance of that just as a human being that survived. Those kids don't survive. And we talked about the issue of food and water, an issue that you need to understand because it's a debate coming to you and maybe coming to your loved ones. Be prepared in this battle of ideas. Lives are at stake, and we want to make sure that you know that lives matter.
Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.